All right, hey there folks, how's everybody doing? So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my latest SLR acquisition, the Ricoh Singlex TLS. I went online to find some information about this, about the history and so forth, and that's a bit of a challenge. You see, there's really no such thing as a Ricoh collector community in the same way that there would be for, say, Pentax or Nikon or some of the other more well-known premium brands. Ricoh was always a budget brand, and so finding out about this particular camera is a little bit of a challenge, and it's kind of it's a bit of a mystery because there were a variety of cameras made that looked very similar, if not identical to this one, and sold under various different brands. And what I found online was largely conflicting and speculative. So I consulted my old collection of photography magazines, and I did come up with some information, and I'll share that with you now. So, and let's see, the first bit of information comes from Modern Photography, December 1967. The current Ricoh Singlex TLS is a far cry from the one of 1964 vintage. As a matter of fact, the same people aren't even building the current model. The older machine was a product of Mamiya Camera Company and looked for all the world like the Nicoh XF. The current camera is made by Ricoh, but is actually the brainchild of the Chinon Camera Company. Okay. When first introduced at the 1966 Photokina, it was called the Prinsflex. Since then, Chinon has licensed Ricoh to make the machine. The aim was to produce a camera with the features of other behind-the-lens meter cameras and at a lower price. So, this camera, which is, at least in the North American market, is best known as the Ricoh Singlex TLS, was originally designed and built by Chinon, branded as a Prinsflex for Photokina, and then Chinon at some point licensed the design to Ricoh, well, licensed as certainly by 1967. So let's see what else we can find. Okay, so then I ran across a full-page advertisement for the Ricoh Singlex TLS in Popular Photography. Back in the United States in the 1960s and 70s, there were two major photography magazines, Popular Photography and Modern Photography. And a full-page advertisement in Popular Photography was not cheap. So for the October 1967 issue, which would have hit stands early September, then Ricoh was putting a fair amount of advertising budget into the North American market for the design which it had licensed from Chinon. And part of the ad copy read, the greatest value in single lens reflex cameras offered today, the new Ricoh Singlex TLS. And greatest value was advertising lingo of the period, which meant high quality, low price. So where does this camera fit amongst the hierarchy of budget options of the period? That is, if you were looking for a budget SLR in the late 60s and early 70s, what were you likely to find, and where does this fit into the pecking order? So I next found an advertisement from 47th Street Photo. Here it is. This is one of the major New York discounters. 47th Street Photo, Modern Photography, December 1971, and they're advertising a variety of discount specials. And one of them is the Ricoh Singlex TLS with a 50mm f1.7 lens, $99.50, with the f1.4 lens, $109.50. They also were advertising in the same ad a Praktica, or I think properly it's pronounced Praktika, but it sounds like a forced affectation if I say it that way. So I'm just going to say Praktica. TL with a 50mm f1.8 for $87.50. So that's a nice discount. You save 12–13% on your purchase if you buy the Praktica. Minolta SRT 100 with 5519. Recall that the SRT series had basically three levels. You had the 100, the 101, and the 102, which were then followed later by the 200, 201, and 202. And the models ending in the 0 were the discount models. The 101 would have been the intermediate model, and the 102 would have been the premium model, roughly speaking. So the discount budget version of the Minolta SRT of the period with a 5519 was selling for $149. That's quite a premium compared to the $99.50 for the Singlex. Next, we have the discontinued, at the time, Konica Auto Reflex T1. The retailer was advertising that the new T2s were arriving. Call for a price. We don't have a price set yet, but they're clearing out the old T1s with a 52mm f1.8 lens for $156.50. So you've got the two premium brands, the discount options from the two premium brands. One's discontinued, the other is a deliberate budget model, selling for $149 and $156 respectively. And then the only way to beat the price on the Ricoh Singlex TLS, at least on this ad, would be to go for the East German Pentacon option, the Praktica TL. Which sold for a not insignificant discount versus the Ricoh. But the real tale here is the price of the Ricoh versus the Minolta and the Konica, I think, because it's set for maybe $150 versus $100. That's a huge difference, big difference. So this was a major, this was a good deal. So there were a variety of cameras made that looked almost identical to this. The only other camera that I can think of which featured the shutter speed dial here. This is the shutter speed dial. You can see that on the top plate, that's empty space here where the serial number is, where normally you would find a shutter speed dial on cameras of this period. It's placed here in the front. The only other camera I can think of, that is completely different camera that I can think of, which features a shutter speed dial in this location on a 35mm SLR, is the original Konica Auto Reflex. That is the model which preceded the Auto Reflex T series. That camera is best known for the lever up top, which switches between full frame and half frame operation. That's kind of what it's known for today amongst collectors. But it also featured a shutter speed dial very similar to this one and placed in just about the same spot here. Other than that, I cannot think of any other camera other than rebranded variations of this, which feature the shutter speed dial in this position. If you can think of one, leave a comment. I'm curious. It's a bit of an odd placement, an odd control placement. But there were a number of cameras which were nearly identical to this one, if not identical, outright identical to this one, which were sold in the late 60s and early 70s. As far as I can tell, this design was physically manufactured by 3 companies and sold under at least 10 different brand names. And I put together a list. Here we go. So we've got the Ricoh Singlex TLS. That is the most heavily marketed version of this design in North America for sure. It was also sold as the Sears TLS. Ricoh had a long-standing relationship with Sears to provide private labeled cameras for the Sears department store chain in the United States. So that was certainly, the Sears TLS was certainly made by Ricoh. You also had the Flex TTL, obviously made by Chinon since they were the ones who originally designed it. You had the Flex TTL, which we know was made by Chinon, and I believe that was made for Dixon's, a retailer in the United Kingdom, and I believe, British viewers, correct me if I'm wrong, that Dixon's was a retailer of photographic goods which did private label a number of separately sourced second tier or bargain products under the Prins or Flex name. So anyway, the Flex TTL made by Chinon for Dixon's in the UK. You also had the Cosina Hi-Lite. What's the likelihood that Cosina was rebranding something Cosina which was made by Chinon or Ricoh? Probably not. My guess is that Cosina is the 3rd manufacturer involved in producing this design. and their design was called the Hi-Lite. Likewise, you had the Argus STL 1000, which was made by Cosina. Sometimes some models were called the Argus Cosina. Some were simply called the Argus STL 1000. Others were called the Argus Cosina STL 1000. But Argus was an American brand name. You had the Focal TLX. Focal was the house brand of Kmart. Kmart was a discount department store chain in the United States, very popular in the 60s and 70s, well into the 80s and beyond. And their house brand was Focal. They sold private labeled film. They sold private labeled third-party lenses under the Focal name. And apparently, who manufactured the Focal TLX? No clue. Could have been Cosina, could have been Chinon, could have been Ricoh. No clue. Likewise, we have the Uniflex Reflex TTL, which was a house brand of Porst, which I believe was a West German retailer. I don't know if that was a department store or if they specified in photography equipment. I have no clue. But that was a West German retailer, and their house brand was Uniflex. And who made it for Porst? No clue. Could have been any one of the three manufacturers mentioned. Likewise, we have the Revuflex 1000 S TTL and the Revuflex T, which was made for Photoquell or Photokel. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Again, a West German retailer of, I assume, photographic equipment. And they sold a private labeled version of this camera as well. Who made it? No idea. But there you have 10 different brand names by 3 manufacturers. So I think it's reasonably safe to say that if you were shopping for a discount 35mm SLR in Europe or North America in the late 60s and early 70s, you were bound to want to run across one of these things. 3 manufacturers, 10 brand names. This was, as far as I can tell, this is the standard budget M42 mount SLR of that period. And today they sell very inexpensively because, again, look at these brands. These are house brands. Most of these are, is there a Cosina collector community? Is there a Chinon collector community? Not really. I mean, not the same way that you have collector communities for Canon or Nikon or Olympus or the major premium brands. I mean, you've got some collectors who have an interest in tracing which third-party manufacturer made the lens for which brand. There are people who do trace that stuff down, but they're not really a Ricoh collector community or a Cosina collector community per se. So these cameras tend to be really inexpensive today. In fact, at least at Camera Store, where I bought this one, this was priced below the comparable condition and comparably featured Practicas. That is, this was priced and there was they recently had and sold I think a Chinon Flex over there again, which was priced below what they charge for Pentacon's Practica SLRs, comparably featured and comparable condition. So this is it. This is the bargain. If you're looking to get into M42 at a bargain price, here it is. This is the one, and it is it's fair to call this a fully featured camera because of the era. Back in those days, a fully featured premium camera would have had a shutter speed range going from 1,000th all the way to 1 second plus B for bulb. Okay, so it's got the required shutter speed range. That was considered the standard for a premium model back in the day. It would also feature depth of field preview, which naturally you have because this camera uses stop-down metering, so you have to have depth of field preview to operate the light meter. And that's the switch right here. It's the on-off switch for the light meter, but which also functions as a depth of field preview. So up, light meter on, lens closed down, down, light meter off, lens opened up. It should also feature self-timer, which is right here. The only premium feature missing on this camera, which would have been considered a required premium feature for a quote premium product of the period, is mirror lockup. There's no provision for mirror lockup on this camera that I can tell. That's the only premium feature that is missing, as far as I know. And again, I've put all of 3 rolls of film through this thing so far. So again, take what I say with a grain of salt, because this is a preview. This is not a full-blown review. I'm just giving my first impressions and what I've discovered about this camera so far. But there are 2 things that I really do like about it. Well, two features, let's say. Feature number 1. There you go. The Copal square shutter. The vertically traveling stainless steel Copal square shutter. That is I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Copal square shutter was one of the greatest photographic inventions of the 20th century. These things just don't fail. They just don't break. The failure rate on the mechanical Copal square shutters is incredibly low, even 50 years later. The shutter is the beating heart of the camera, and if you've got a Copal square shutter in your camera, at least you know that probably ain't gonna break. The other thing I like about this, or the other feature I like, is the film advance is confidence inspiring. Let's put that on B, put that up too. So, and it's a relatively short throw for the period. Some of the budget cameras back in the 60s would have a very long throw for the film advance. Not this. This has a standoff position here, and you advance it like so. That's very easy to work. It's very smooth. It is a confidence inspiring advanced mechanism. It feels solid, and it's got a nice smooth short throw. So I do like that as well. All metal construction. You know, the only plastic on this thing on the exterior, well, that button is plastic. I think that's all metal. I mean, is this a glass window or a plastic window? I'm not sure. That could be plastic. This surrounding the eyepiece, that's plastic. Other than that, you got to open it up to see any more plastic. It's well built, nice metal machine. If you're looking to put together an M42 system on a shoestring, this is a nice choice. As far as I can tell, again, I've only put like 3 rolls of film through it up to now, so I should really reserve comment and reserve judgment. But so far, I am favorably impressed, and I think that this is, well, my project with this camera is to see what can you get in the M42 system on a shoestring budget. You know, if you don't want to spend money on a refurbished Spotmatic and pay the premium for the really popular, Super Takumar lenses and Carl Zeiss Jena optics, what can you get? Is there good stuff out there on a shoestring at M42? And so this is my basis for that project right there. And so far, I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'll keep everybody updated. So that's where we're at. That's what I know. If you know something about this camera that I don't, or you have interesting information, you have experience with it, please do drop a comment and share your knowledge with everybody else. Thank you so much. I hope you found this video amusing or informative or a combination thereof. If so, please do like, subscribe, and as always, check out the links down below. Thank you now. Bye-bye.